Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I'm Jennifer Hester Maddox, the Executive Director of the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning. Tonight marks our 13th annual induction ceremony, but in case you're superstitious, don't worry, I've got you covered. 13 is lucky in my family, and tonight is going to be incredibly special. It's going to be definitely one to celebrate. Under the leadership of retired Executive Director Neil Chethik, we founded the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame in 2012 to honor Kentucky writers whose work reflects the character and culture of our Commonwealth, but also to educate Kentuckians and others about our state's rich literary heritage. Kentucky's literary community is a special one. It's a place where writers of all ages and backgrounds find a supportive environment, both in the instruction given and in the encouragement to pursue their writing goals. At book launches and open mics, these writers are rock stars, and the audience responds with enthusiastic applause and with cheers. Afterwards, readers interact with featured authors and poets. You'll also find the works of our state's talented writers performed on stage, printed in newspapers and journals, and much more. Kentucky has no shortage of literary talent. Tonight, you'll experience the works of 5 Kentucky writers who have especially made a deep impact on our Commonwealth. Tonight wouldn't be possible without the outstanding support of our sponsors: Kentucky Arts Council, LexArts, Cornett, University of Kentucky Community Engagement, Charles and Linda Gorton, Janet Holloway, Silas House, Jim Gray, State Farm Agent Russ Tucker, LV Harkness and Company, Visit Lex, and WUKY 91.3. Our deepest thanks to your support. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to a member of our Hall of Fame's founding committee and our dear friend, Mayor Linda Gorton.
How's everybody doing? Yeah, whoo! This is one of my favorite nights of the year, and I want to welcome all of you to the historic Kentucky Theater. And for those of you who are coming from afar, we welcome you to Lexington and to the Commonwealth. So this is a special year in the life of our city. We are celebrating our 250th birthday, in case you haven't heard. I know a lot of you have heard. So this is still March, but in April, each month has a theme, and in April, our festivities focus on music and the written word. So, as I said, this is one of my all-time favorite events, and I'm proud to be a founding member of the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame Committee, way back whenever the heck that was. It is really an amazing evening, and we honor our most talented Kentucky writers. So right here in the heart of the bluegrass, we cherish the art of writing. We cherish it. And we celebrate our authors. Fine writing is a Kentucky tradition. From U.S. poet laureates and Pulitzer Prize winners to the neighbors among us who write short stories and screenplays and history, Kentucky is filled with talent. And speaking of wonderful talent, I want to congratulate this year's Hall of Fame inductees: Crystal Wilkinson, Frank X. Walker, Naomi Wallace, Ron Eller, and David Dick. We are so proud. So, just in closing, I always want to thank our Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning Executive Director Jennifer Maddox and her staff for their undying commitment, and it's all about education and literacy. and it's a commitment that continues to make Kentucky, and of course Lexington, a better place for all. So thank you for coming tonight. It's a great big crowd here, and I want to again congratulate our honorees and all those who are part of the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gorton. You're a great friend of Lexington, Kentucky literature. Good evening, I'm Tom Eblin. I'm the Carnegie Center's Literary Arts Liaison. Thank you for being here tonight. First, I would like to recognize any previous Hall of Fame inductees who are with us tonight. If you could stand or raise your hand, and let's give them a round of applause. Got a couple on the stage. I want to begin the evening by looking at some of the highlights of Kentucky's Year in Literature. But first, we have a welcome video from Ada Limon, a part-time Lexington resident who is now serving as the 24th Poet Laureate of the United States.
Hi, my name is Ada Limon. I am the 24th Poet Laureate of the United States. And I just wanted to welcome everyone to the event and to give my heartfelt congratulations to all those exceptional writers that are being inducted into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. I wish I was there to hug you, celebrate with you, lift you up, but just know that we need you. Now more than ever, we need to be reminded that language has power, that language matters, and that community and the strength that we have to lift up one another means everything. So congratulations to all of you. I will be raising a glass, and just know how much we appreciate you and all the work that you do. Congratulations.
Yeah, if she ever quits traveling around, we can get Ada back here in person. The past year has been a strong one for Kentucky writers, and let's begin with three of tonight's inductees. Frank X. Walker recently published his 13th book, Load in 9 Times. It's a terrific book of poems based on the lives of Black Kentuckians during the Civil War era. He was a finalist for the NAACP Image Award in Poetry. He also received Art Connect's Literary Award in 2024. Crystal Wilkinson's book, Praise Song for the Kitchen Goes, became a national bestseller for Penguin Random House. It followed on the success of her poetry collection, Perfect Black, which won the NAACP Image Award. She also was recently named the Bush Holbrook Endowed Chair of English at UK. Her next book, Heart Sick, about her mother's mental health challenges, will be published next year by Crown. Naomi Wallace, who flew home to Kentucky from her residence in northern England, will leave tomorrow for New York for the opening of The Return of Benjamin Lay. She co-wrote the play with Owensboro native Marcus Rediker, a historian at the University of Pittsburgh. The one-man show is about an anti-slavery Quaker writer and activist in 18th century Pennsylvania who also happened to be a dwarf. Lay's writings in the mid-1700s would later inspire American abolitionists. Nicholas County native Barbara Kingsolver Barbara was a 2017 Hall of Fame inductee, shared the 2023 Pulitzer Prize for her novel Demon Copperhead about the opioid crisis in southern Appalachia. Kingsolver used profits from the more than 3 million copies sold to create Higher Ground Women's Recovery Residence near her home in Southwest Virginia. The center, which recently opened, will house between 8 and 12 women recovering from drug addiction, offering them a place to stay for up to 2 years. Women will also receive counseling and other forms of support, such as free community college classes. The prolific novelist and poet Percival Everett, who taught creative writing at the University of Kentucky, including Frank Walker, I believe, from 1987 to 1989, won the 2024 National Book Award for his novel James. It's a reimagining of Mark Twain's novel Huckleberry Finn from the point of view of Jim, or James, Huck's enslaved sidekick. Silas House was nominated for a Grammy Award. For Best Music Video for his work on fellow Kentuckian Tyler Childers' song In Your Love. Silas will finish his 2-year term as Kentucky Poet Laureate on Kentucky Writers' Day, April 24th. Silas's project as Poet Laureate included writing workshop at state parks and a terrific podcast, Writing Lessons with Silas House, which you ought to listen to. It's very good. He interviews Kentucky writers about various aspects of their craft. The Carnegie Center was among the partners who made this podcast possible. Silas would like to say a few words about his time as Kentucky Poet Laureate, so come on up.
Thank you, Tom. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the inductees. I count them all as dear friends who have inspired and influenced and encouraged me as a writer, so I'm so proud to know all of them. My term as the Poet Laureate of Kentucky ends next month, and I have been honored to serve in this capacity for the past 2 years. I have traveled the state and the nation a lot in that time as a representative of the Commonwealth, and I've been honored to welcome many people to our state as well. I'm particularly proud to have served under Governor Andy Beshear, the most popular Democratic governor. He is the most popular Democratic governor in the nation, and rightly so. He's a governor who leads with empathy, and I especially admire how deeply he cares about the arts. We are lucky to have him and to have everyone who works so tirelessly for the arts in our state, from our Secretary of Tourism, Arts and Heritage, to everyone who works in the Kentucky Arts Council, especially the two folks I have worked most closely with, Tamara Coffey and Chris Cathers. Most states do not have such dedicated and driven people working for the arts, so I always want to hold them up. While I have the chance, I also want to thank the Carnegie Center for how much help they have given me in my role as Poet Laureate. The staff at the Carnegie always amazes me with the way they go above and beyond. They're so dedicated to education and literature, and I'm really proud to be associated with them. Jennifer Maddox, the executive director, is always ready to go to work for the arts. So let's give her another hand. I'm grateful to Todd Eblin, who works so hard for this event and for so much more in his position as literary liaison at the Carnegie Center. To me, he's one of the people that I immediately think of when I think of the writing community in Lexington. And I want to thank the entire staff at the Carnegie Center. They all do so much for our community. They are all really always going above and beyond, so I'm thankful to them. I'm also thankful to the Kentucky Humanities for all the help they've given me as Poet Laureate, and they've always been willing to do whatever they could to help to spread the word about literature in the state. In my time as Poet Laureate, I've had 3 main initiatives. First of all is my Listen Now project, and for that I wrote curriculum for all of Kentucky's schools K through 12 to learn how to take and preserve oral histories. The main goal being to get young people to talk to their elders and their families and communities. And I've been really happy to hear from many teachers, librarians, and senior living center directors who participated in that program. If you want to be part of that program, all you have to do is go to the Art Council's website, and it's all there for you to download. Secondly, I conducted a series of writing workshops at the Kentucky State Parks, and my favorite thing about that is that it brought writing lessons into more isolated parts of the state that often do not have access to such programming. Third, I created a podcast called Writing Lessons that Tom mentioned, and the goal of that is to provide free writing lessons for anyone who wants them. So it's used in classrooms, and it's also just used by people who want to learn more about the craft of writing. Guests so far have included David Arnold, Gwenda Bond, Frank X. Walker, Barbara Kingsolver, Carla Gover, Georgella Lyon, Rebecca Gale-Howe, Kathleen Driscoll. My fourth initiative is one I'm still working on, and I want there to be signs announcing the home counties of our most widely known writers. The first three will be Bell Hooks, Barbara Kingsolver, and Wendell Berry. Yeah. I am still waiting on county administrators to help me with this. So if you know any of them, tell them to get on the ball. I only have a month left, so I'm hopeful we'll get movement on that soon. But my main goal as Poet Laureate has been to make the arts, especially the literary arts, as visible as possible in our state, and to make more people throughout the world aware of what a rich literary history and legacy we have here. Writers like the ones on this stage and many in the audience as well have made my job so easy, because there's so much to brag about in the world of Kentucky literature, and it's been my honor to spread that word far and wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Silas. In other news this year, The Lost Story, a national bestseller by Louisville-based author Meg Schaefer, the pen name of Tiffany Reese, racked up accolades including an IndieBound bestseller, a Book of the Month Club selection, and a finalist for a Goodreads Choice Award. Last month, Tiffany's husband, Andrew Schaefer, released the Literary Cats coloring book, which included drawings of famous authors recast as cats. They included Jane Austen, Edgar Allan Tobins, and Zora Neale Hurston. Louisville writer Jessica Whitehead recently published Driftwood, The Life of Harlan Hubbard. This is the first full biography of the 2016 Hall of Fame inductee, whose off-the-grid life along the Ohio River was previously chronicled in a Wendell Berry book and a Morgan Atkinson film. Lexington novelist Margaret Verbal, who I believe is with us tonight, was named the University of Kentucky English Department's Alumnus of the Year. Her most recent novel, Stealing, which came out in paperback in 2024, was longlisted for the 2024 Mark Twain American Voice Literary Award. And the New York Times listed her 2019 novel, Cherokee America, as among the best American books published since 2000. Louisville writer Ellen Burkett Morris was a Donald L. Jordan Prize winner for the Beware of the Tall Grass, a novel about the strange phenomena of young children haunted by memories of people who died before they were born. Floyd County native Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr. Willie won the Stonewall Award and the Barbara Giddings Literature Award for his book, Gay Poems for Red States. Northern Kentucky novelist Sheila J. Williams published No Better Time, a novel based on the experience of her mother's first cousin. She was one of 855 black women who served during World War II in the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. The unit sorted 3 years of backlogged mail for U.S. soldiers fighting in Europe while battling racism from the Army brass. If this story sounds familiar, it's because her book came out just before the Netflix film, The 6888. NBC sports icon Tom Hammond of Lexington and Lexington Herald-Leader sports columnist Mark Story wrote Hammond's memoir, Races, Games, and Olympic Dreams, A Sportscaster's Life. Linda Elizabeth LaPinta of Elizabethtown won the Popular Culture Association's Best Book Award in Women's Studies for Kentucky Quilts and Quilt Makers, 3 Centuries of Creativity, Community, and Commerce. Poet Kathleen Driscoll, who also chairs the Naslin Mann Graduate School of Writing at Spalding University in Louisville, won a Pushcart Prize for her essay, Church of the Goat Man. Janet Steele Holloway's latest book is Pathlights, Holding the Torch to Light Another Woman's Path, We Brighten Our Own. It tells the story of Women Leading Kentucky, the nonprofit organization she founded, and the impact it has made on Kentucky women leaders of all background and stages of their careers. Carol Peachy won the Excellence in Photography Award from the Southeastern Library Association for her book Shaker Maid, Inside Pleasant Hill's Shaker Village. Matt Williams won the 2024 Thomas D. Clark Medallion for Endangered and Disappearing Birds of Appalachia in the Southeast. Louisville native Garth Greenwell's novel Small Rain has been longlisted for the PEN/Faulkner Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award. It also has been named a notable and best book of 2024 by numerous publications, including The New Yorker, The Washington Post, NPR, and Publishers Weekly. The University Press of Kentucky, which published many of the books by Kentucky authors that I just mentioned, also publishes award-winning books by authors outside the state. Those included Emily Strasser, who won the Minnesota Book Award and the Southeastern Environmental Law Center's Writing Award for Half-Life of a Secret, Reckoning with a Hidden History. And poet Nadia Colburn's book, I Say the Sky, which won America's Best, the American Book Fest General Poetry Award. And just last week, Bancroft Press published Lexington writer John Wynne Miller's novel Rescue Run. The World War II thriller is a sequel to his award-winning 2023 book, The Hunt for the Peggy C. One of the Carnegie Center's major literary initiatives in recent years has been the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. Here to give a brief update on its growth and activities is the program's coordinator, Claudia Lovemeyer.
Before I begin, how cute is this cane? Good evening, friends. I'm proud to share that in 2025, Carnegie Center celebrates 5 years of supporting the Black community through the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative, or the KBWC. This initiative was created to address systemic racism and the economic, educational, and even publishing disparities that the Black community faces. To this end, we offer Kentuckians free writing and language classes. But wait, there's more. Since our inception, the KBWC has given away $36,138 in scholarships. The Black and Lit Book Club has sent readers 600 books to celebrate writers such as Jacinda Townsend, Minda Honey, and Tracy Michelle Lewis Giggets. Our Burn the Mic series continues to make space for a diverse array of poets. We have featured poets like Dorian Hairston, Samar Johnson, and Deirdre White. And our membership has grown to almost 200 strong. We've expanded our community partnerships to include the Bell Hooks Center, the Levy Collective, and the Heinemann Settlement School. We have even been featured with the Lexington Philharmonic Orchestra and on the stage at the Leeds Center for the Arts. Articles about our work has appeared in Kentucky Monthly, Lextropolis, and the Chevy Chaser. And last year, we made the cover of the South Sider. We continue to commission public art projects and I'm very pleased to announce that our next offering is Perfect Black, Poetry for the People, inspired by Hall of Fame inductee Crystal Wilkinson. Perfect Black will introduce Black poets to the community by showcasing their work all over Lexington. The KBWC has amplified Black voices to tens of thousands of listeners through our Say It Loud series with WUKY and made one of our most successful events, the Queer Literary Hoedown, from a one-time offering to an annual affair. In good times and in challenging times. And I'm going to say that one more time. And in challenging times. The Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative continues to shine, and we will keep illuminating the Commonwealth with the light of Kentucky's Black stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia Love. The Carnegie Center also sponsors the Lexington Youth Poet Laureate Program. I'll get that out. Here to introduce Lexington's third Youth Poet Laureate is Jonathan Hall, the Carnegie Center's Youth and Outreach Director.
All right, there's no good person to follow up here. I love following Claudia Love. You're the best. Love ya. Eva Elcres Monet is now our third Lexington Youth Poet Laureate, following in the footsteps of the incredible Kitan Adidiji and Zoya Abbas, after achieving runner-up last year, which I just let you know 2 hours ago that you did that. You were runner-up last year. Eva has continually improved her craft and participated in so many events in our community, all kinds of projects like our Young Writers Project at the Carnegie Center, Teen Howl's Poetry Night at 3rd Street, and we have also participated and did a wonderful job at our Kentucky Book Festival event. You may have heard Eva speak at any of those places. But Eva is a senior at Scapa with the Literary Arts Program and is finding a true love for poetry. Eva's work is inspired by anything seen, heard, or experienced and can be found on coffee shop bags and college interview folders. Outside of poetry, Eva also co-edits the Lafayette Times, volunteers at Northside Library, and just likes to sometimes walk aimlessly around downtown Lexington. Who doesn't? All right, let's give a warm Kentucky welcome to Eva.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? So this poem I'm about to read you is one that I wrote, I read at the commencement ceremony for Youth Poet Laureate, and it's titled Milanesa, which is a food from my culture, and it's the first food I was ever taught to properly make, and it's kind of a love letter to who I am. Milanesa. Milanesa, noun, a thin slice of beef, dipped into beaten eggs, seasoned with salt and other condiments, dipped in breadcrumbs and shallow fried in oil. Number 1, breadcrumbs in the pan, ones that used to be crushed by your mother's hands. Day-old stale bread from the panaderia on the corner, with your childish fingers in her wrought ones that begged for sweetened layers and rotted your teeth dark brown. 2, egg wash in the other, you always said to keep it second and separate. Spice with the paprika bought on the corner of the strip mall, where our tongue congregates in a sea of sales stickers. 3, thin sliced meat, whatever you'd like, we're not picky, just whatever can be found. If you're smart like us, need a thick slab with a harsh and gentle awakening for maximum outcome. 4, now dip. Watch it ebb and flow from dry to wet. Dip into each part of you, the one that exists on the dusty cobblestones and the boisterous laughter and around the swirling mountains and outside of here. 5, heat the skillet. Yes, the electric will work just fine. Do you hear the sizzle, the thumping speakers that spill, striking accordions? Pour the oil generously, let it tumble out like drawn-out melodies. 6, let it sit and fry till the color of your eyes shine through, dark honey and hazel like our roots beckoned. Never let the jet black strand shine through, or else a pile of ash will spew off the griddle. 7, pick it out. Drag it into a new home, a new life, a new country, a new name. Aim to be gentle, but if it's all right, you were both to prosper on the hard white porcelain platter. 8, grab the knife, serrated edges with the mahogany base we stole from Abuela. She hasn't noticed yet. Maybe the one with the square blade, the one you crafted just like your father. You look like him, you know, same long, sad face. 9, cut deep. Listen to the fleshed hair. We are rabid animals. Whenever the tender meat falls onto our plates, we must hold back our ancestral urges. 10, squeeze the lemon, cut with the same knife, a blossom of the quince tree, or the ciruelo in Tia's backyard that refuses to die, in the whirlwinds of this unpredictable life. 11, consume whole, lick your lips, let your thick smile crawl onto your face. Do you want some more? Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. That was beautiful. And now, let's begin this year's Hall of Fame inductions. Since the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame was created in 2012, we've inducted 66 writers, 18 living writers, and 47 from the past. Tonight, we will add 5 more inductees. Inductees are chosen from public nominations by 2 committees of Kentucky writers and readers. A committee at the Carnegie Center compiles a list of candidates each year that is then ranked by a committee chosen by the Kentucky Arts Council. Based on those rankings, the Carnegie Center Committee chooses a class of inductees. For living writers, this is sort of a lifetime achievement award. For some deceased inductees, their fame may have passed decades ago, and for others, recognition may have eluded them during their lifetimes. But with all of them, the quality of their work has stood the test of time. We have several members of the selection committees with us here tonight. If you would stand or raise your hand so we could recognize you. Tonight we will begin with our first inductee, the late David Dick.
David Dick was born in Cincinnati in 1930 and grew up in Bourbon County, where I'm from, where 5 generations of his family have lived. He became nationally known as a CBS News correspondent during the golden age of television news. After he retired from CBS, he returned home to Bourbon County and made a name for himself in the literary world. In addition to becoming a journalism professor at the University of Kentucky, David Dick published 14 books, 3 co-written with his wife, Lolly. He also founded 2 weekly newspapers, and one of those was the Bourbon Times, where for 7 years I was a newspaper reporter. Unfortunately, it was after he had already retired as publisher. But David Dick died in 2010 at the age of 80. To read a selection of David's work, I'd like to welcome his son, Sam Dick, to the podium. Sam.
Before I read, they said I could talk for a minute, so I'm going to take advantage of that. It's hard to put into words what this honor means to my father, who was with us in spirit, and to his family. My dad, the CBS correspondent, the director of the journalism school, the author of over a dozen books, was at his core a lover of the written word and a storyteller. Much of our family is here tonight, and I would like them to stand and be recognized. Right here, stand. I'd also like to recognize Lolly Dick. Can you stand? Lolly, for going on 40 years, traveled countless miles, worked endless hours as not only my dad's partner and wife and life partner, but as his editor, his co-writer, the bookkeeper, the driver, you name it, Lolly did it. Lolly, thank you. I'm going to read just a portion from his first book called The View from Plum Lick. It's always been one of my favorites. It was the first one. And this little excerpt takes us back to the mid to late 1960s when, before he was with CBS, he was a reporter for WHAS TV in Louisville. He's been assigned to do a documentary in a small town in Kentucky. He has gone to the legendary journalist Joe Creason at the Courier-Journal and asked for, who can I talk to in this small town? I don't know anyone who will help me with this documentary, who has some insight into the people in this small town. And Joe says, you need to go see a Mr. Fain. If there were anything that stood out about Mr. Fain in his grocery store, it was his spit-polished shine on his meat-cutting machine. Everything on the outside might be going to hell in a handbasket, but inside, Mr. Fain's meat-cutting machine was clean as a hound's tooth. For miles around, there might be unspeakable littering, everything from beer cans to abandoned refrigerators, junk cars to busted bed springs. Inside Frolic Fain's store, the meat-cutting machine was enough to have made the poets proud. Cleanliness is next to godliness were words surely written for Frolic Fain and his meat-cutting machine. The mechanism looked as if it had just come from the factory box. It had a shine on it that would dazzle the phoenix. If you looked at it too long, it would make you blink. Mr. Fain, I would like to have one of your bologna sandwiches. Mr. Fain said, how did you know about my bologna sandwiches? He had that watchful look revealing his natural Kentucky tendency to want to know what strategy lay behind any such request. Joe Creason told me. He said you had the best bologna sandwiches between here and Louisville. Nothing more needed to be said. Mr. Fain turned to the refrigerator, reached inside, and took out a long tube of bologna that looked like it had been made in bologna heaven. He walked to the meat-cutting machine and threw the switch. That meat-cutting machine hummed like the sweet juice of glory. The blade turned in anticipation that it was about to do what it was meant to do since the coming of the Industrial Revolution. Frolic Fain's sure hand eased that tube of bologna toward the blade. When they touched, it was divine consummation. Shroom! They touched, and one slice lay over like a ballet dancer touching her toes. Shroom! And the second slice joined the first. Frolic gathered the two slices, married them between two slices of light bread, and laid the critter on the counter. He stood back and smiled. I bit into the sandwich and smiled back. Of such encounters do lasting friendships take root and grow with never a backward glance. Fast forward a few weeks and he returns to the store. It was a hot summer day, and when I arrived at the crossroads, I was more than thirsty for a soft drink than I was hungry for a bologna sandwich. Wouldn't you know it? Frolic Fain's store was closed. There was a sign on the door which said, back in 30 minutes. There was nothing to do but wait. I looked for some shade on the side of the building, and that's where I came upon a sorry dog. Sleeping and snoring as if there were no tomorrow. He was one of the ugliest dogs I'd ever seen in a lifetime of admiring all kinds of dogs. He was a scroungy dog. His ribs showed. When he breathed, little puffs of dust rose up and settled back on his crusted nose. He was a Camelot for fleas. He reminded me of an old crumpled throw rug that had spent more time outside than in the house than in it. About this time, Frolic Fain drove up in his pickup truck. At the sound of it, this good-for-nothing dog jumped up like it had been shot from a cannon. His target was that front door, and by the time Frolic had his hand on the knob, that dog had his crusted old nose snug up to the crack in the door jamb. His nose quivered, throwing off tiny, fine flecks of dust, shimmering in the sunlight, slanting across the treetops, finding their home on Frolic Fain's doorstep. When Frolic opened the door, that dog took off running down the front of the counter like he was at the head of the stretch of the West Memphis dog track. He rounded the counter corner, all four legs tangling and untangling. He headed up the backside of the counter like a dog who knew where he was headed. He was going full tilt until he reached that meat-cutting machine. That's when he threw on the brakes. He jumped up, put both scrawny front paws on the edge of the meat-cutting machine, and licked the whole thing, clean as a whistle. Frolic Fane smiled and said, "Bet you want another bologna sandwich." I smiled back and said, "Yep, reckon I do." Thank you all.
That could not have been read any better. Thank you, Sam. Your daddy would have been proud of you in so many ways, but that took the cake. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all of those who have come because they love Kentucky writers and their works. Without the strong support of Mayor Gorton and the Carnegie Center's Tom Eblin and Jennifer Maddox, the Kentucky Arts Council, and all of those wonderful supporters tonight would not have been possible. I deeply appreciate the support of our family and friends from near and far who are here tonight to celebrate all the passion for writing. I especially thank Kay Collier Sloan McLaughlin, who gave me her reading classes when I lost mine. Kentucky, this is my homeland, a state of mind, which of course is possible in any land at any time. Yet Kentucky is quietly out of the ordinary, providing a common ground, encouraging human beings to reach within themselves and be there in the way that Khalil Gibran described beauty in The Prophet. Beauty is eternity, gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror. From Kentucky, a State of Mind. Of all the accolades David Dick could have wished for, including his national awards, his desire above all desires was to write, and God willing, be recognized as a Kentucky writer. A writer to champion those people who were quietly living their lives, doing valuable things for which there was usually no recognition. A writer to chronicle the places where people dwelled with their thoughts and dreams and ideas for their take on what it means to live life as a Kentuckian. During his years as a reporter and anchor for WHAS, and then as a correspondent for CBS News, he covered and wrote scripts for some pretty horrific events: uprisings in Belfast, wars in the Middle East and Central America, and the most disturbing and life-changing of all to him was the mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana, all the while dreaming of being back home in Kentucky. The stories he relished the most were those he did for CBS's Sunday Morning, all human interest. Upon retirement from CBS and our move to Kentucky for his next career at UK School of Journalism, the long banked coals of his desire to write about Kentucky smoldered and caught fire when in 1988 he began writing Kentucky Monthly's column, The View from Plum Lick, every month for 22 years until the day he died. I'd also like to recognize a young man in this audience, Jackie Larson, our publications would be nothing without his beautiful artwork. And we thank you, Jackie. In 1992, at age 62, David was diagnosed with prostate cancer. But throughout the remainder of his life, he wrote and wrote and wrote, and in those 18 years produced 14 books. His mantra was never, never, never give up. And he didn't. Even as he battled his fatal disease, up rivers, down creeks, around bends, through hollers, he trudged with his ever-open reporter's notebook, always looking out for that chance meeting with a Kentuckian to share their story. Today, there is an endowed scholarship entitled the David Dick What a Great Story Scholarship Fund at UK for journalism students and writers, and it continues to recognize 1 or 2 students every year for their excellence in writing. This gentle, humble man, a shepherd in the finest sense of the word, a loving man of deep faith, was in love with his beloved state of Kentucky and its people, and he strived to let them know how very special they are by telling their stories and sharing them with the world. Deepest gratitude to all of those responsible for this meaningful award, and thank you, David, for holding that mirror up to all of us. Thank you.
So our second inductee of the evening is Ronald Eller, a retired history professor at the University of Kentucky. Here to introduce Ron is George Ella Lyon, a multi-talented writer and poet who was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2022. George Ella?
Thank you all for being here and for everybody who worked to make this happen. I've just been saying, it's just wonderful to have such a joyful occasion in this time to be rejoicing in the creative work, in the amazing place that supports it, that we have this Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame, that we have this kind of community of writers and nurturing new writers, like the Youth Poet Laureate. So, we mustn't take any of this for granted. Well, Ron Eller hails from the mountains of southern West Virginia, from 5 brothers and sisters and 8 generations of an Appalachian family. He was the first person in that family to go to college, and when he needed to take time off to earn money, the dean said, "We'll find a way to bring you back to school because we need people like you to bring balance to the student body." Eller says, "It's the first time I realized they saw me in a different way. And I wanted very much to understand why. Why were his people seen as different? Why was poverty so persistent in the region?" Many years later, he explored these questions in Miners, Mill Hands, and Mountaineers, the Industrialization of the Appalachian South, which won the 1983 Weatherford Award and was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. After completing his PhD at UNC Chapel Hill, Dr. Eller taught at Mars Hill College before coming to UK in 1985 as director of the Appalachian Center at UK, where he served for 15 years. In an interview, Eller explains that in all his work, teaching, writing, and public service, he has stood for education as a transformative force to empower not only individuals, but communities. He says, "It became the work of my life to learn what I could from history that we could apply to the present and affect public policy." He articulates the fruit of that learning in Uneven Ground, Appalachia since 1945. It too won the Weatherford Award, making him the only writer to win it twice. Among his many other honors are the Jim Wayne Miller Award for Distinguished Service to Appalachia and 2 East Kentucky Leadership Special Awards. Beyond the region, Dr. Eller served on President Clinton's Council on Sustainable Development, on rural education reform with the Ford Foundation, the American Council on Education, and the American Association of Community Colleges. He also served as a visiting scholar for the Appalachian Regional Commission in Washington, D.C. The range of his works and the honors for it are dazzling and far too many for me to chronicle. So I'd like to close with 2 personal responses. The first is from Robert Guy here on the stage. When I first came to East Kentucky in 1989, Ron was bossing the Appalachian Center. Very kind, very wise, very keen to the power of networking and organizing, very engaged in the doing of it. I was a UK Commonwealth Fellow, which was a Kellogg-funded project at UK. I'm at Appalachian Center. I met a lot of people all over East Kentucky who were doing important things in their community, and it helped me understand how the university could impact life in our communities. The program invested in local people and trusted them to figure things out, have good ideas, and be able to work together for the good of the whole region. And I'd like to close with something my son Joey wrote about studying with Ron Eller as an undergraduate. I cannot remember if Dr. Eller is the reason that I switched my major from English to history, but he was absolutely the reason I knew I had made the right decision. His teaching was both personal and authoritative. Many teachers I have had have wanted to be connected so closely to their subjects, but lost something in the teaching. Those who stood back from their subjects might be able to orate history, but I could never see real people living those lives. Dr. Eller was able to bring those worlds together and make me realize that the lives we lead are knit closely to the lives of others around us, the experience of those living with us, and connected to the lives and actions that came before. I was able to glimpse a thread from the subject to the lives in the room, and I wanted to follow those threads wherever I could find them. I owe a huge debt to him for unlocking that passion and for sharing his with the world. Please help me welcome Ron Eller to the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much. I'm very deeply honored. I want to thank George Ella for that gracious, very gracious introduction, and the Carnegie Center for its kindness. My freshman English teacher some 60 years ago would be shocked and proud. I'm especially grateful that the Carnegie Center chose to include an historian among the list of admired writers. Historians are not always considered on such lists. although they have traditionally provided the narrative that shapes our understanding of American culture and values. Good history, like good literature, speaks to us through stories, enlightens us about fundamental human values, and challenges us to dream of a better future. I did not expect to become a writer or an historian. I come from a long line of mountain storytellers, preachers, and musicians. But no one in my family had ever been a scholar or a writer. But being the first of my family to go to college and being a child of the 1960s, college transformed me. I became aware that there was very little in the history books about my people, and much of what I read in the popular literature was demeaning and wrong. So I set out first on a path of self-discovery, and then to challenge the received view of the mountains as a place of isolation, backwardness, and self-imposed poverty. Along with many others of my generation, I deeply believed that if we knew the facts and we shared the evidence, that we could create a better world. Lyndon Johnson called it, for good or bad, a great society. I became an historian not because I was interested in complex intellectual theories, academic debates, or romantic accounts of powerful white men, but because I sincerely hoped to change stereotypes and influence public policy toward the mountains. Those of my generation who helped to launch what we now call Appalachian Studies saw no boundaries between the academy and democratic activism. Appalachian Studies was born out of resistance and activism. Our research was almost universally connected to hope for progressive reform, justice, and the improvement of life in our communities. We challenged the stereotypes and the lies. We knew that our communities, like the rest of America, were a diverse collection of races, genders, ethnicities, and classes. We knew that if provided with equitable playing fields, those communities could prosper and thrive. And we knew that if our story was included as part of the national narrative, it could reshape the way we viewed America as a whole. We believed in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We believed that those were fundamental American values, critical to building a better society after the horrors of World War II. I became an historian because I believed that research and writing could help to change society. In the process, and perhaps because historical writing is so heavily documented with facts and evidence, I became convinced that Appalachia was not part of some other America, but indeed was part and parcel to the American experience. Appalachia was not an exception to the American experience, but, as Harry Caudill first suggested, was a mirror to that experience. As a result, I tried throughout my career to connect my writing with public policy decisions across the Commonwealth and the nation. That pattern of linking research and writing to public decision-making had a long tradition in Kentucky. And here I'm going to echo some of the things that Mayor Gorton said. When I came to Kentucky more than 4 decades ago to replace John Stevenson as director of the Appalachian Center and Harry Caudle in the UK History Department, the Commonwealth was already the center of research on the Southern Mountains and the focal point for regional activism. It was also the leader in political reform nationally that produced the Appalachian Regional Commission and other Great Society initiatives. Scholars at UK like Thomas Ford, James Brown, educators and religious leaders at Berea College like Pearlie Ayres, Loyal Jones, Willis Weatherford, journalists in Whitesburg, Louisville, and Lexington like Barry Bingham, Al Smith, and Tom Gish, writers like Wendell Berry, Harriet Arno, Gurney Norman, James Still, Jim Wayne Miller, George Ella Lyon, among many, many others, and politicians like Bert Combs, Carl Perkins, John Sherman Cooper, and Grady Stumbo had focused the attention of the nation on Central Appalachia. Since then, Kentucky scholars and writers have continued to lead the nation in literature about place and life in the mountains, and they have increasingly garnered recognition for their insight into rural life, economic development, environmental policy, and healthcare. I hope I've contributed a little to that legacy by correcting historical myth and documenting the challenges and triumphs of a much misunderstood and maligned people. Above all, I have tried to write history for and on behalf of all the farmers, miners, mill workers, preachers, mechanics, and family members who know the reality of living on uneven ground. When I went off to college, both of my grandfathers, one a mountain preacher and the other a former miner, got me aside and in their own peculiar way cautioned me not to get above my raising. As one put it, read through them books, which is his way to say, don't forget where you come from. I hope that I've been able, to do just that. Thank you.
Our next inductee is Frank X. Walker. Introducing Frank tonight is Chester Grundy, a member of the Carnegie Center's Board of Trustees and one of Frank's mentors. Chester.
Thank you, Jen. I know I'm supposed to have 3 minutes, but I'm going to ask for a democratic prerogative. I'm going to be very considerate, but I'm compelled to say every word, okay? All right. So it'll go a little longer than 3 minutes, but I waited a long time to do this. So please indulge me. This evening, to me, represents the best of what a full circle moment means. And it's one that I am extremely grateful to bear witness to. It is an understatement to say that Frank X. Walker and I go way back. Our relationship as friends, brothers, collaborators, and when necessary, co-conspirators extends more than 40 years now, starting way back in the 1980s during his time as an undergraduate at UK. In those days, Frank was my work study student in the Office of Minority Student Affairs, where I served as the program coordinator. Even then, I remember being impressed by two qualities about him that really stood out. his boundless creativity, and his insatiable curiosity. In fact, I never told him this, but my supervisor, the late Jerry Stevens, and I had an in-house name for him, 20 Question Frank. We called him 20 Question Frank because he never showed up without his notebook, which doubled as his sketch pad, and never without a pen. It was pretty obvious even then that Frank possessed the gift of storytelling. And his love for storytelling was expressing itself in his artwork, his writing, his wood sculpting, his calligraphy, and his painting. And his passion for storytelling was only surpassed by his deep love for all things about the African world. So let's fast forward to the mid-1980s when my office, in response to the grand vision of the late Dr. William Parker, God bless him, initiates a 2.5-year effort to establish an African American Cultural Center at UK. It became obvious to me that Frank X. Walker would be the natural choice to be the center's first program coordinator. But before things got going, we had to first address the burning question that everybody on campus was asking. Why all this agitation over the idea of a Black Cultural Center at UK? Why? Because when we look closely at the pattern of enrollment and attrition of Black students at UK during this period, we observed that they were leaving UK in unusually high numbers after the first year. And typically, it was not because of academic problems. It was because they were not being seen. And what do I mean by being seen? Is that there was very little that existed in either the curriculum offerings or in the campus environment that positively affirmed these students as full, dignified, valued members of the UK community. So, the Martin Luther King Jr. Cultural Center became the cultural antidote to this situation, a safe place where Black students could not only be seen and affirmed, but where they could find community. But the center could not exist simply as a space. It needed programming. Frank and I agreed that we would build our programmatic vision around 3 pillars of learning: art, culture, and history. And right out of the gate, under Frank's creative leadership, the MLK Cultural Center became ground zero for high-quality, world-class Black cultural programming. Its annual calendar featured regular offerings of lectures, theater, dance, poetry, film, visual exhibits, and more, bringing to the campus high-profile artists, writers, activists, statesmen and stateswomen, scholars, change makers, and freedom fighters. Its mission was to provide a counter-narrative to the revisionist mythology that defined Black people as a problem or simply rendered them invisible. Metaphorically speaking, we wanted the King Cultural Center to operate as, one, a mirror. It's great to hear mirror reference so many times up here. And 2, as a window. As a mirror, our programs would provide a brilliant reflection to our Black students, one that would give them a more expansive, empowered view of self, one that would expose them to a more truthful, authentic telling of their history, making them secure in their own skin and abilities. Thus, we hope to generate within them a sense of unlimited possibilities. And for white students, the Cultural Center would serve as a window, so to speak, allowing them, through the power of shared cultural experiences, to engage in the culture and to look at the culture as a more complicated, critical understanding of the Black experience. One that would rescue them from insidious narratives rooted in vile notions of Black inferiority and white superiority. And through these regular engagements with our programs, we would not only impact the consciousness of all of our students, we would nourish their minds and their souls, revealing to them the deepest levels of their humanity, teaching them not only the love of self, but the love and respect for others. All of this through a deep, immersive experience in Black cultural excellence. And man, did we do it. During Frank X. Walker's tenure with the King Cultural Center, we saw nothing less than a golden era. We set the programming bar very high, and this found the center regularly punching above its weight class, bringing in cultural heavyweights, the likes of Maya Angelou, Ruby Dee, Amiri Baraka, Ntozake Shange, Shirley Chisholm, Alice Walker, Alex Haley, Haki Madhubuti, June Jordan, Randall Robinson, Nikki Giovanni, and even once hosting the greatest heavyweight of all time, Muhammad Ali. You know, the great Frederick Douglass said once, "A man is worked on by what he works on." And as the work of the Cultural Center gained traction at UK, it was my joy to watch the beautiful evolution of my brother, Frank X. Walker. This was righteous, transformative work we were engaged in, and it changed both of us. I'm so happy to stand here this evening and say, thank God we never got over it. Frank would go on to direct cultural arts centers at Purdue University, the Kentucky Center for the Arts, and the Governor's School for the Arts. But I believe it was a work at the King Cultural Center that catalyzed his recognition of himself as a writer, because it was there that he would meet the great Nikki Finney. And it was there that he would be mentored by the legendary Gurney Norman, both of whom would help convince him that in heart, mind, and spirit, he was indeed a writer. It was also in that little 2.5 room space that he, Nikki, and Crystal would meet and workshop with a small group of writers, some novice, some seasoned. They would in time come to be known as the Afrolation Poets. To his great credit, Frank Walker is of that rare breed of scholar, artist, activist who very wisely has always kept one foot in the academy and one foot in the streets. Aside from the 13 books, numerous journals, and more than 50 anthologies, his contribution to the cultural life of Central Kentucky over many years has been enormous and consistent. His artistic fingerprints are all over this city, not just through his writing, but through his work with the NIA Study Travel Camps, the Roots and Heritage Festival, Message Theater, not to mention his eye-popping murals at the Robert H. Williams Center, Old Dunbar, and the Bluegrass Aspendale Teen Center. As an artist activist, his work has never been about art simply for the sake of art. But as he puts it, it's art to, quote, unsilence the muted and give voice to the voiceless. It is this profound understanding that centers his work in the long, rich, truth-telling tradition of Black writers the likes of Claude McKay, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Audre Lorde, Amiri Baraka, June Jordan, and Toni Morrison, and our own Bell Hooks, and many, many more. It is a tradition which values humanity over money, truth over power, creativity and consciousness over conformity and compliance. One more thing, and it's a secret, okay? But I'm gonna tell you, if you promise that it doesn't get outside this room. Is that a deal? It's a deal. Frank X. Walker possesses a superpower. In addition to having a foot in the academy and a foot in the street, he has his ears and his heart tuned to the ancestral realm. And through this superpower, he's on speaking terms with the community of ancestors. Medgar Evers, York, Isaac Murphy, Margaret Garner, and the valiant men of the U.S. colored troops, as well as everyday folk of Affrilacia. Through his prodigious gifts, he has rescued and returned to us these great ones from our history, those who have too often been erased or silenced. His masterful historical poetry has given them voice, agency, and their full humanity. Frank's stories are uniquely American stories, stories of survival, stories of resistance, stories of triumph over adversity. And in these stories, I think, can be found the key to our collective liberation. As one of Frank's mentors, the great Walter Mosley, has told us, Black history is a torch that can lead us all out from this darkness. I want to thank Frank for always being that torch and for the priceless gift he has been to this community and this nation. And finally, on behalf of my family, especially my daughters, I want to thank Frank for the beauty he has brought to our lives. Just know that we love you for all you are and all you do. Thank you.
Why do I feel guilty? Thank you, Baba G. I know I was hoping for like a James Brown kind of introduction. As my mom would say, that'll do. I've got this long thing that I feel guilty for reading. I'm gonna kind of spot read here, because I just want to say thank you. And I got a long list of gratitude to express. My mother was a Pentecostal minister for 22 years. And she used to tell her colleagues that she was raising another minister. And she came to one of my first readings and watched how people responded to the poems. And then she said, that'll work. So I had permission to not be at the podium interpreting the word, but permission to create my own version of them, to tell our stories. Thank you, Chester, for those kind words. I want to just read this. It's hard to believe that I was your student worker 44 years ago, or that I lived and worked in Lexington longer than anywhere else I've lived, including my hometown of Danville, Kentucky. I was honestly hoping for more of a James Brown introduction, but to quote my mother, that'll do. Congratulations to all of tonight's honorees. Sharing this moment with you makes it extra special. Thanks to all the friends and family who sent words of congratulations and regrets that they couldn't be here, especially Hakeem Al-Budi, Marianne Worthington, Eli Capeluto, Melinda Price, Gerald Smith, Ricardo Nazario Colon, Dr. Kelly Ellis, Mama V, and Papa Dick. I want to call a few other names that are special to me and help shape me, who could not be here because they are no longer on this plane. But it's important to me that I say their names out loud because that's how we keep them alive. I choose to believe they are watching from beyond the grave, starting with my own mother, Faith A. Smith. Special thanks to her for giving me breath and stories and a poet's heart. My sister Wanda Marie Walker for her strong thumb on my spine and the honeybee tattoo on my back. My good brothers and dear friends, Keith Griffith and Patrick Mitchell. My father, Frank Walker Sr., for his face and this gut. The Honorable Lamine Swan, for his own fierceness. May they all rest in power. Thank you, Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning, for this honor, and your great staff. You are the anchor for Lexington's reputation as a literary community. I've sat in this audience for most of the previous induction programs and dared to imagine this particular moment, but believed it would take another dozen books or years to get here. Claiming the title writer stretches way back to before high school, so I must thank Ms. Sweezy, Ms. Harney, Mr. Atkins, Barbara Rynearson, Alice Shelburne, Virginia Graham, all of them for investing in me. Thank you, Ms. Helen Fry, the Alpha, and Raynette Jones, the Omega of Black librarians, and the Danville-Boyle County Public Library for not only let me drive the bookmobile when I became the Poet Laureate, but for also letting my wife and I, Dr. Shauna Morgan, be the first and only couple to get married in the library. This is the inside joke. It's the only evidence I needed to know that this time I had it right. See, 5 people got that. During the first of my 3 tours of duty at UK, as a student columnist for the Colonel and co-founder of the editorial cartoonist for the Communicator, I was also an administrator and young poet reading poetry at Laverne Zabilski's Working Class Kitchen events when Alfalfa's was on Limestone. Was writing plays for, writing plays for Message Theater and establishing the Bluegrass Black Arts Consortium that had a space right next door to this theater. My second tour of duty was at Cultural Center, spent almost 10 years there. This is now my 15th year as a professor somehow, and this amazing creative writing program. Good to see you out there, Willie, and all the other alumni. Dorian, we see you. That Crystal and I think Eric is here, Andrew is here, Robin, who holds us down and runs the ship. Julia's out there. We're doing some good work, and I think that's only reflected in the number of students who keep increasing every year in the application pool. We're very proud of the fact that our program is the most diverse and one of the most safe programs in the country. Can we get a hand for that? As a UK student, I was a mentee of James Baker Hall, Edgar Tidwell, Sandy Govan, Bob Hemingway, Percival, Nikki Finney, but none of them impacted me like Gurney Norman. Gurney and Naoka Hawkins' Old Cove Press published my first collection of poetry, Affrilachiae, 25 years ago. And it's still in print. You would know that collection was supposed to be poetry and a collection of short stories, but I'm a slow fiction writer. I'll skip that. I'm grateful to the good people at University Press of Kentucky. I think are all back here on this side, a whole row. Thank you for the beautiful children's book, A is for Affrilachiae, which is illustrated by the amazing multidisciplinary artist and poet Up From Some Dirt, aka Ron Davis, right there in the second row. All I had was a poem, he made it a book. Thank you, Katarina and Bill Goodman and the Kentucky Humanities Council for a book fair that continues to celebrate Kentucky writers. It's always an honor to be on Kentucky Row and to look down at my friends and family, Greg Pate, Tammy, and know that this not only feels good for us, and it's kind of our family reunion because the only time we get to see each other, but our community comes out and they buy books and they ask for signatures and they make us feel what it's like to be a Kentucky writer. That's when for us it starts to mean something. Thanks to Lexington Children's Theater, Larry and Vivian Snipes back in the day, and Bill Case, who directed my Isaac Murphy, I dedicate this ride production. Some people know that I'm also a playwright. Naoka Hawkins turned that play into another collection of poems. Need to say that UK is where I've spent most of my adult life, where I met more than a few good friends, some amazing colleagues, and even made a few enemies. But you gotta love a place that would give you an honorary doctorate, feature you on a TV commercial with one of your superstar students, shout out to Dorian Hairston, and put your words on the inside and outside of buildings all across campus. UK is also where I joined the mighty Mu Theta chapter of Phi Beta Sigma, so I need to say Blue Phi. Another inside joke. Thanks to Mark Johnson, the brains behind the East End's Artist Village, who agreed that the village deserved a house full of poets and artists. He's the reason you can't go to Winchester Road without seeing one or two billboard-sized poems which are attached to the Met Building. Thanks to K&K for making my poem, Love Letter to the World, into a tattoo project, a music video, translated into a dozen languages and tattooed on hundreds of bodies around the globe. You can read it on the side of the building that's short and upper, just below the giant metal gear, as Kumasi calls it. It says, Unlearn Fear and Hate, which is an excerpt from the poem. This is the last part. I'm not gonna close with a poem. I just wanna call out a few more names to bring them to the space. Kumasi is here, but I need to say Nikki and Devan and Ella and Nina. Shout out to Beverly, Deborah Lynn, Carla and John, Sonia, Brittany, Brenda, Smitty, Aunt Catherine, Dewana, baby, Greg Pate, Joel Pett, Roger Cleveland, Byron Costner, Dorian Hairston. I'm on spring break next week. Let's go write 18 poems. Thank you.
Our next inductee is Crystal Wilkinson. Here to introduce Crystal is award-winning Kentucky novelist Robert Guy. Robert, you might need to fix this mic.
I wish I had a nickel for every time me and Georgella have been on the same stage and she's putting it down, I'm putting it up. Nikki Finney says, words about Chrissy must always begin with love. I love Crystal Wilkinson. Gurney Norman calls Wilkinson a heart-centered writer, an authentic voice of rural Kentucky, a treasure. Hall of Famer Frank X. Walker calls her a multi-genre dynamo. Finney calls her the daughter of a long line of tender-hearted black women whose hearts were redacted from history, but never from family stories. A writer who knows everything there is to know about plucking her garden of words straight from the mouths of those women who waited hundreds of years for her to stop writing at the stoplights of Lexington and just go on and tell their story true. The other day, Crystal Wilkinson sat in a coffee shop here in Lexington with the window at her back. The early morning light poured down Winchester Road and lit her from behind. Her voice came out of a field of pure sunshine as she spoke with force and eloquence of bureaucracy, rurality, and scone. As she spoke, the words of Rebecca Gale Howell came to mind. Crystal Wilkinson is a goddess. It is a defensible position, but if true, Wilkinson is a particular kind of goddess, the kind that walks humbly among mortals with clarity of purpose, a defender of country ways, an elevator of fellow deity Prince Rogers Nelson, comforter of the abused, protector of narration by fragment and poetic compression. But to call her a goddess is to sell her short. This is a human being, mother to 5, grandmother to 9, spouse to 1. A woman whose writing projects absolute confidence in the divinity of the people about whom she writes. The divinity of, in her words, the matriarchs, the housekeepers, the granny women, the educators, the wives, the witches, the ones who bleed, the drumming heart of Black Appalachia. This is a woman of deep craft who has married form to content in a way so sophisticated it seems simple. I have cooked out of Praise Song for the Kitchen Ghost several times. And several times I have looked at the recipe and thought, man, that looks pretty good. And then I fixed it and it's come out really good, which is like a metaphor for Wilkinson's whole thing. She makes magic out of the ordinary. She wrote in celebration of Gale Jones, I use dialect and voice as tools, as weapons, as conduits to the ancestors. Jones taught me to create truths through the eyes and mouths of ordinary people. Why can't omniscience sound like my grandmother? Why can't I think a point of view as my country black grandmother riding the back of a bird through the story? Born in Ohio of a Kentucky mother, raised in Casey County on Indian Creek by Silas and Christine Wilkinson. Crystal Wilkinson is a Kentucky writer through and through. Kentucky writers exist to make art, but also to make place, to make community, to go back and fetch water handed down by the artists who came before, and to carry that water to the garden that is this place, a garden planted in fertile but rocky soil, beset by varmints, but capable of great bounty. Crystal Wilkinson has carried that water the way she carries her business generally, with kindness, never abandoning, as Georgella Lyon writes, the elemental life where the hogshead was boiling on the stove. Words about Crystal Wilkinson should always end with love. All y'all who love her, please make welcome to the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame, Crystal Elaine Wilkinson.
Thank you, Robert, from the bottom of my heart. I knew he was going to make me laugh and cry. He did both. I'm just filled with the deepest gratitude to be standing here. I want to thank the Carnegie Center for their hard work, not for just this program tonight, but for all the hard work they do for Literary Lexington and for Literary Kentucky. I think collectively we are so very fortunate to have the Carnegie Center, and make sure you support them every way you can. To the jurors, I want to thank you for finding my work worthy. I hope you know how much this kind of validation from my own means so much to me in this Black Kentucky country woman writer's life. To Frank, Naomi, Ron, and David, what a grand list we appear upon in the history of this honor. I also want to thank my family, my children, my grandchildren, and my Ron. I love y'all. Some of them are here. A special shout out to my academic colleagues from all the places I've taught, many who are here tonight, and a special shout out to my students, former and present. I think that things like this are not only about those of us that have the gray in our hair, but those that will be coming behind. And there's so many talented writers among them. And I thank many of them for being here tonight, and I love y'all too. I'd be remiss if I didn't include my ancestors, my grandparents Silas and Christine, who raised me, and all the other old-time people who gather around me every day, and they say, "Girl, you the one that's supposed to tell our stories. Now don't you forget our ways and our traditions." I gladly take up that responsibility, and I feel like they are here with me on this stage tonight. I'd like to think that my grandfather is over there in the corner with his overalls on, nodding his head proudly, and my grandmother is sitting there beside him in her finest church dress, her hat and her pearls, smiling. I remember my grandmother watching me out the screen door when I was a little girl as I sat under a tree down by the creek in a scribbling fury. I wanted so desperately to be a writer. And later I did receive an education in writing, but all I knew down in my bones, in the deep crevice of my heart, was the mountains and the hills and the people who lived there. That was my truth. All I knew was the value of beans in the pot and bread on the table. I knew outhouses and one-room churches. I knew the great richness of life and the pride that can come from being poor and country. I come from a place where everybody knows your people, and women and men rely on the land and each other and God. The Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa, I'm all over the place. I done went from the holler to Japan. But you may know him by The Seven Samurai or Red Beard or Rashomon and others. But he says to be an artist means to never avert your eyes. My literary imagination will always live in Appalachia. It's of me. It's genetic. It's an ancestral mark. I'm haunted by the landscape, the place, the people of that place. But lately, when I look at what's happening in our country, I found myself wishing to be more reclusive. On some days, I don't not only want to write, I don't even want to look at the world. But on other days, like tonight, I know and embrace my calling. Like many of you, I know that my purpose on this earth is to look and to see and to write all of the world's beauty and its ugly too. Toni Morrison said, "It is precisely times like this when artists go to work." I'm lifted up by this celebration of writing here in Kentucky. As Morrison said, this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I'm filled again with gratitude to be on the roster where the names of so many writers I admire are written. Wendell Berry, Bell Hooks, Effie Waller-Smith, Etheridge Knight, Gurney Norman, George Ella, Bobby Ann, my dear friend Nikki Finney, and so many others. Tonight, we celebrate. Tomorrow, we speak out, we write, we do language. No, we might not save the world with poems and stories and essays and plays, but writing and reading and celebrating the written word can sure make us feel like we're living in a world worth saving. In solidarity, keep up the good fight. Thank you all.
Our final inductee of the evening is Naomi Wallace. Here to introduce Naomi is the acclaimed novelist Silas House.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Naomi Wallace is, quite simply, and with no exaggeration, one of the best and most acclaimed playwrights working today in the world. She is the author of more than 24 plays and has several other projects in process right now, including writing the book for a major Broadway musical that is going to receive a tremendous amount of attention once it premieres. That is the Loretta Lynn musical, Coal Miner's Daughter, co-written with Greg Pierce. I'm so glad that they have a Kentuckian doing that, working on that project. She is also finishing a trilogy of plays set in Kentucky, and is also in process with Small Town, a play based on the work of John Mellencamp, especially his 1982 masterpiece, Jack and Diane. She is also involved in the forthcoming production of a feature film based on her acclaimed play, Night is a Room. Wallace's most famous play is One Flea Spare, set in 17th century London during the bubonic plague. The play, which explores the clash of social, cultural, and sexual boundaries, was made part of the permanent repertoire of the French National Theatre. She's only the second American in its 300-year history to be honored by this company. The other one is Tennessee Williams. The play was born right here in Kentucky as One Flea Spare had its American premiere at the Humana Festival of New Plays at Actors of Louisville in 1996. Her other well-known plays include The Trestle at Popelet Creek, Slaughter City, and In the Heart of America. In 1995, she published a book of poetry, To Dance a Stony Field. And of course, The Return of Benjamin Lay premieres this week at the Sheen Center in Greenwich Village. She co-wrote that play with Marcus Rediker, who is from Owensboro. She is known for being a collaborative writer, She co-wrote The Girl Who Fell Through a Hole in Her Sweater with her husband, the wonderful British writer Bruce McLeod, and Returning to Haifa with Palestinian playwright Ismail Khalidi. She and Khalidi collaborated again on Guernica, Gaza, Visions from the Center of the Earth, which was produced last fall in the West Bank city of Ramallah. In 1999, Wallace received one of the top honors for thinkers and artists in the world, a MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. She also has received an Obie Award for Off-Broadway Theater, the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize, the Fellowship of Southern Writers Drama Award, the Horton Foote Award, an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature, and the inaugural Wyndham Campbell Prize for Drama. She was born in Louisville and grew up with 5 siblings on a farm near Prospect, as well as in Amsterdam, the hometown of their Dutch mother. She comes from a long line of journalists. Her father, journalist Henry Wallace, later became a civil rights activist. Her grandfather, Tom Wallace, spent most of his career in top editing jobs at the Courier-Journal and the Louisville Times. An ardent conservationist, he led a 5-year effort in the 1920s to prevent construction of a hydroelectric dam that would have destroyed Cumberland Falls. Then he helped preserve it as a state park, and I'm especially thankful to him for that. For more than 20 years, Naomi Wallace has lived in North Yorkshire, England, with her partner Bruce and their 3 children. But they have always kept strong ties with Kentucky, visiting friends and family here almost every year except during the pandemic. That is the official biography, but I want to offer some personal insights briefly. Naomi and I have been friends for more than a decade now, and in that time she has been one of the most supportive and encouraging voices in my writing community, despite living an ocean away. She is incredibly modest, deeply thoughtful. She is an artist and person who leads with empathy, and of course that is the quality that makes the best artist. I always think of how principled she is in standing up for what she believes in. After commissioning Return to Haifa, the Public Theater in New York was too afraid to stage it, and they refused to perform it. When a former artistic director at Actors Theater of Louisville refused to perform a play it had commissioned there because they feared retribution from pharmaceutical companies that she was calling out, she spoke out about the refusal to stage it. Her social justice work is fearless. She has worked with women in the criminal justice system. She's a committed environmentalist and a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice. Yes. Naomi is a tireless advocate for justice and human rights throughout the world. In 2016, she was one of the Freedom Riders with the Women's Boat to Gaza. One of the bonds that we share, I believe, is that we both believe that an artist stands against injustice not only in our work, but also in our actions. She is a model for how to do art, but also how to be active, how to act in a time that requires more action from our artists. She has been an inspiration and a model to me on how artists can be activists in the work and in their daily lives. She makes me want to be a better artist, and she inspires me to fight harder for others. I'm so thankful to her for her guidance, encouragement, example, and most of all, for her friendship. And another thing I love about Naomi is how much she loves Kentucky. She has an international voice that has expanded and complexified notions of who we are as a people, and as a place. I am honored to know her, and I'm so glad to be here tonight as she is inducted into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Please welcome Naomi Wallace.
that was one of the most beautiful and inclusive introductions I've had. Thank you so much for that. I am very honored to be here, and I wanted to let you know that mine's going to be short with some sweetness. First, I'd like to thank everyone who made this evening possible. For me, especially Tom Eblin, who has been a lovely host and a guide for my visit here. It's truly an honor to share this induction with my brilliant fellow inductees. As a writer, I have immeasurably benefited from the Commonwealth in Kentucky. By this I mean the numerous teachers that have shaped my writing life. People whose revolutionary imagination and passion for a more just and equal society continue to inspire and underwrite my plays. My sister Carla Wallace, organizer and co-founder of SURGE, Showing Up for Racial Justice. Lisa Osenka, lifelong advocate of affordable housing. Pam McMichael, Kentucky writer and also co-founder of SURGE. My sister Sonia, poet, filmmaker, and organizer. Penny Schaefer, friend to all animals. Kate Fossil, Anne Braden's biographer. The artist Guinevere Smith, whose paintings have covered the walls of my home since I was 19. And two of my more recent instructors, Jason Howard and Silas House. I always miss two beloved teachers who taught me the importance of disturbing the waters, as it were, whether that be through words or fishing on Harrods Creek. My father, Henry French Wallace, and my brother, Henry Bryan Wallace. I also want to pay tribute to my very first teachers, the intimate friends of my childhood, and by the names we used then. Angela Tucker, Sarah Burke, Kit and Jay Aldridge, Linda and Cindy Rice, Patrick Carroll. I want to say with Cindy Rice, I even shared a boyfriend at 16. And contrary to expectations, we became closer because of it. And then to the ghosts of my Kentucky childhood, who are still some of my closest and most active friends. These dead youths continue to live within me, guiding me, making sure I honor their spirit. Most of them died young from overdose, car accident, or suicide. But these friends, who were a second family to me, were joyous and generous until life and the false promises of the American dream knocked them down. What my friends did understand was that we must resist what diminishes us. And this Commonwealth keeps on giving, keeps on nurturing. I have been fortunate to find guidance as a writer for movements for justice in Kentucky, most recently Showing Up for Racial Justice, the largest organizing effort in the United States to move white people into action for a multiracial democracy. And Rednecks for Black Lives, a project of the Kentucky People's Union founded by Beth Howard, whose important book by the same name is out this year. I believe that it is the writer's job to collapse the geographical space between here and there, to disrupt the barriers between the past and present, between the living and the dead, and to connect that which is disconnected, that which divides and segregates. As Ta-Nehisi Coates asserts in The Message, writing must be a, quote, practice in service of a larger emancipatory mandate, unquote. Part and parcel of this mandate for me is to think through the intimacies of over there with here, the intimacies of here with over there. Although I have lived in the Yorkshire Dales of England for over 25 years, Kentucky continues to inhabit and often haunt my writing, whether I write about the plague in 17th century England or colonial wars in the Middle East. And that means, on the one hand, I have found myself in these last few years writing a trilogy about Kentucky. And on the other hand, I find myself writing about Gaza. Since 1996, Kentucky has exported $1.6 billion worth of goods, $136 million of which in the form of military contracts to the State of Israel, a country which has in the last 16 months dropped 85,000 tons of US-made bombs on Gaza. This detonated more than 6 times the explosive power dropped on Hiroshima on an area the size of Las Vegas. Gaza might be called the land of children, as more than half of its people are under 18 years of age. This bipartisan-sponsored imperial carnage, which is firmly supported by most European governments, including the UK, is unequivocally intimate. Our workers make these bombs and the aircraft that drop them, and our taxes pay for them. People in Appalachia were among the first Kentuckians to show up to resist this genocide, making parallels between the extractive destruction of mining that lines the pockets of the already rich and increases both the poverty of the region and the torment of our earth, and the destruction of bombs on Gaza. The detonation over there is echoed here. I quote Appalachians for Palestine. The roots of Appalachian and Palestinian struggles are connected by the systems of imperialism, capitalism, and patriarchal white supremacy, as our fellow Appalachian bell hooks taught us. Martin Luther King said in 1967 in his Beyond Vietnam speech that the United States is, quote, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, unquote. It was true then, and it's true now. But it's not violence and carnage that fires up my imagination as a writer. It is a people's resistance to colonialism, racism, impoverishment, and war in both Gaza and Kentucky. May we as a people not be divided from our commonwealth. May our imaginations destroy the geopolitical borders between us that make some lives more valuable than others. May we know and indeed celebrate that our lives depend on one another, no matter where we live, no matter who we are. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for this honor.
I'm not sure what's going on with the lights, but I will remind you that this theater is more than 100 years old. Thank you for being with us tonight, and please keep your seats for a few moments while Carnegie Center staff members are going to escort our inductees out to the lobby where they will be signing books afterward on your way out. Ron, if you anyway, they're back, okay. But anyway, we want to thank Joseph Beth Booksellers for handling book sales tonight. Please join me in another round of applause for tonight's inductees and the presenters. great examples of why Kentucky writers are some of the best in the world. You can hear from other outstanding Kentucky writers and past inductees at upcoming events taking place at the Carnegie Center. On April 15th, the Kentucky Great Writers Series will have a 250 Lex special edition featuring Kentucky Poets Laureate who live in Lexington. And from late March until early May, the Carnegie Center's gallery will display broadsides printed by our previous Literary Impact Award winner, Gray Zeitz of Larkspur Press. I would like to again thank our event sponsors, the Kentucky Arts Council, LexArts, Cornett, University of Kentucky Community Engagement, Charles and Linda Gordon, Janet Holloway, Silas House, Jim Gray, State Farm agent Russ Tucker, LV Harkness and Company, Visit Lex, and WKY 91.3. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your evening.